I stopped lying about event times to my wife. She missed her favorite artist on her birthday. Now she's packed her bags and wants space from our marriage. My wife, 32F, and I, 31M, have been together for 5 years. I'm fed up with my wife's chronic lateness to many things. It's really annoying and grates on my nerves. To her, it seems like no big deal because I always manage to rush her by telling her the time of an event 45 minutes earlier. She's never noticed earlier because she's too caught up with herself, constantly taking photos. That's the reason she's always late. She has a decent following on Instagram and is looking to grow as a content creator. I find it really silly how she turns everything we do into a photo session, and at this point, I've stopped agreeing to take her photos altogether. We've had several conversations about this. I've told her that it's mentally exhausting for me to always have to stay on top of making sure we both get ready according to plan. But she never really does anything to address it. This time, I wanted her to experience the consequences of her actions. This month alone, we've been embarrassingly late to events 2 times, and this time was the first she realized I hadn't been honest about the timing because I used to give her an ETA 40 minutes earlier. A week ago, I told her I wouldn't be doing that anymore and that I expected her to act like an adult and be more responsible. It was her birthday this weekend, and I got her tickets to an event featuring several performers, including her favorite artists in the first act. This time, as I'd already told her before, I didn't give her the extra 40-minute buffer. I expected her to remember our conversation and store that information in her head to plan accordingly. Instead, she did her whole influencer routine, decorating our room, setting up studio lights, dressing up, and taking photos. The whole time, I knew she was missing out on her favorite artist because she didn't take me seriously. It was so ironic that I didn't even feel like reminding her. I'm done with the mental burden of always rushing and planning. We arrived, and she realized what had happened. She got upset and started crying, asking how I could do this to her on her birthday. She said it seemed like I was liking the rise it got from her and asked why I couldn't set my ego aside for one day. I told her this was on her. I'd already made it clear I wasn't going to rush anymore, and she should have listened the first time and expected me to follow through, unlike her. She said the whole point of the event was to see the performances of those artists who we'd just missed. She was incredibly upset and kept crying off and on during the event. The ride home was awkward. I was in the downstairs restroom when she texted me saying I wasn't welcome in the bedroom that night. I ignored her message and went in while she was changing. She looked like she wanted to kill me, and I simply told her that her saying I'm not welcome was irrelevant because it's my room too. If she's uncomfortable, she could take the couch. She ended up leaving to visit her mom, and I'm considering whether I was an a-hole. Update 1. Alright, so after I posted about the whole birthday incident, I've been getting a mix of responses. Some people are telling me I was right to let her face the consequences of her actions, while others think I was a total jerk for doing it on her birthday. I didn't realize how split people would be on this, and it made me reflect a bit more on how things went down. So here's what happened since then. After my wife left to stay with her mom, I didn't hear from her for about 2 days. I figured she was just cooling off and, to be honest, I thought the space would be good for both of us. But after the second day of silence, I started getting a little anxious. I mean, we've never gone that long without talking before, even when we were fighting. So I reached out, asking if she was okay and if she wanted to talk. I got a pretty cold response from her, just saying she needed more time and wasn't ready to come home yet. I thought it was just a matter of time before she'd come around and we could finally have a conversation about what happened. But then something weird happened. I was scrolling through Instagram. Don't judge. It's a habit I picked up from her. And I saw that she had been posting stories the entire time she was gone. She didn't mention me at all, of course, but she was posting about random things like her outfits, coffee shops she was visiting with her mom, and even a couple of motivational quotes about putting yourself first. I don't know why, but something about that just really rubbed me the wrong way. Here I was, waiting for her to be ready to talk and sort things out, and she was out here acting like everything was fine. It made me question whether she even cared about what happened between us. But I didn't say anything, because I didn't want to seem like I was stalking her social media or whatever. I decided to give her the space she asked for and let her come to me when she was ready. Finally, after almost a week, she texted me saying she wanted to come home, but that we needed to talk when she got back. So I agreed, and a couple of days later, she came home. When she walked in, I could tell something had changed. She wasn't her usual bubbly self, the one who's always taking selfies and making every moment an Instagrammable experience. She seemed serious, almost distant. We sat down, and she started by saying that what I did on her birthday really hurt her. She told me it wasn't just about missing the artists, but about the fact that I knew how important that day was for her, and I chose to let her fail. She felt like I set her up to fail, like I was waiting for the moment she would mess up so I could say, "I told you so." That's when I realized she wasn't just upset about missing the concert. She was hurt because she felt like I didn't have her back. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to set her up, that I was just tired of always having to plan everything around her chronic lateness. I reminded her of all the times we'd talked about it, and how she never seemed to change. She listened, but I could tell it wasn't getting through to her. She kept saying that if I really cared about her happiness, I would have just told her we needed to leave earlier, especially on her birthday. That's when things took a turn I wasn't expecting. She admitted that she's been feeling overwhelmed lately. She said that trying to grow her social media presence has been way more stressful than she ever thought it would be, and she feels like she's always chasing the next perfect moment to post. She said she's been struggling with balancing that with our relationship, and that sometimes she feels like I don't support her dreams of being a content creator. I was kind of taken aback by this. I mean, I knew she was serious about Instagram, but I didn't realize it was causing her that much stress. I always thought she just enjoyed it, like it was a hobby that she took a little too seriously. But hearing her say that she felt unsupported really hit me in a way I wasn't expecting. I told her that I do support her, but it's hard for me to get behind something that's making our lives more stressful. I told her that I miss when we could just enjoy things together without turning everything into a photo shoot. I miss when we could just go to dinner or a concert and be present in the moment, instead of thinking about how it would look on her Instagram feed. She started crying at that point, and I didn't really know what to say. It was the first time in a while that we were actually talking about how we felt, instead of just arguing about who was right or wrong. She told me that she didn't want to lose me, but that she also didn't want to give up on her dream of being a content creator. She said she felt like she was stuck in the middle, trying to make everyone happy, and it was tearing her apart. That's when I realized that this whole situation was bigger than just her being late to things. It was about the fact that we weren't on the same page anymore. We were living two different lives, me, trying to keep things normal and stress-free, and her, trying to build a career out of something that I didn't fully understand or respect. We ended the conversation without any real resolution, but at least we were talking. She said she needed more time to think about things, and I agreed that we should both take a step back and figure out what we really want. She's still at home, but things are definitely tense between us. We're not fighting anymore, but it's like there's this invisible wall between us now, and neither of us knows how to break it down. At this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I love her, and I want to make things work, but I'm also realizing that we might be on completely different paths. I don't know if we can find a way to meet in the middle or if this is the beginning of the end for us. All I know is that something has to change, because I can't keep living in this constant state of frustration and resentment, and I don't think she can either. Update 2. All right, so here we are again. Things have escalated since the last time I updated, and honestly, I'm not even sure where to start because it feels like everything is spiraling out of control. But I'll try to break it down as clearly as possible because I need to get this off my chest. After that big conversation we had, where she opened up about feeling overwhelmed and I admitted I missed the way things used to be, we didn't really come to any solutions. It was like we hit this emotional wall and couldn't figure out how to climb over it. For a few days, we just kind of coexisted. No big fights, but definitely no real connection either. It felt like we were just going through the motions, like we were both waiting for the other person to make the next move. I thought maybe things would get better if I gave her more space. I figured she was dealing with a lot, and maybe she just needed some time to work through her stress without me breathing down her neck about every little thing. So I tried to be more supportive, or at least what I thought was supportive. I didn't nag her about being on her phone all the time, and I didn't bring up the whole lateness issue again because I didn't want to make things worse. But honestly, it felt like I was walking on eggshells, just trying not to piss her off, and that's not a good way to live. Then last week, she told me she had been invited to a content creator event in another city. It was a pretty big deal, from what I gathered. Lots of well-known influencers and brands were going to be there, and it was a great networking opportunity for her. I knew it meant a lot to her, so I tried to put my frustrations aside and be happy for her. She asked if I wanted to go with her, but she framed it in a way that made it pretty clear she didn't really want me to go. Like, she was asking out of obligation, not because she actually wanted me there. I declined, figuring it would be better if she just went and enjoyed herself without me tagging along. Plus, I thought maybe having some time apart would help us clear our heads. I was hoping she'd come back with a fresh perspective, and maybe we could finally get on the same page. Well, she went to the event, and from the looks of her Instagram, she was having the time of her life. She was posting non-stop, pictures of her in fancy outfits, hanging out with other influencers, tagging brands in her stories. It looked like everything she'd been working toward was finally happening, and part of me was genuinely happy for her. But another part of me felt completely disconnected from it all. It was like I didn't even recognize the person I was seeing online. I tried to push those feelings down and just be supportive, but then something happened that I didn't expect. One night, while she was at the event, I got a message from a mutual friend of ours. It was a screenshot of my wife's Instagram story, and in the background of one of the photos, you could see her sitting awfully close to some guy I didn't recognize. Now, I'm not the jealous type, but the way they were sitting looked way too intimate to be just friends. At first, I thought it was no big deal. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was probably just a weird angle or something. But the more I looked at the photo, the more it started to mess with my head. So, like an idiot, I decided to check her Instagram stories more closely, and I saw that she had posted several pictures and videos from that night, but none of them showed this guy. It was almost like she had carefully curated what she was sharing, which made me even more suspicious. Now, I'm not proud of this next part, but I went full detective mode. I started checking the tags in her photos, looking at the profiles of the other people she was with, and sure enough, I found more photos from that night. In some of them, this guy was right next to her, and they looked way too close for my comfort. In one picture, it even looked like he had his hand on her lower back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but everything in my gut was screaming that something wasn't right. So I decided to confront her about it when she got back. When she came home a few days later, I tried to keep things cool at first. I didn't want to explode on her right away because, again, I could have been overreacting. But as soon as she walked through the door, I could tell something was off. She barely looked at me, and she seemed distracted, like she was still mentally at the event. I asked her how it went, and she gave me the usual rundown about how amazing it was and how she made so many connections. But the entire time, I couldn't shake the image of her with that guy. Finally, I just asked her outright who the guy in the photos was. She looked at me like I had two heads and asked what I was talking about. So, I showed her the screenshots our friend had sent me, and her whole demeanor changed. She got defensive immediately, saying it was nothing and that he was just some random guy she met through another influencer. She said they only talked for a little while and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. But something about the way she was acting didn't sit right with me. I asked her why she didn't post any photos of him on her own stories if it was so innocent, and she got even more defensive, saying she didn't need to post every single detail of her life. At this point, I was starting to get really frustrated because it felt like she was dodging the question instead of just being honest with me. That's when she dropped a bomb I wasn't expecting. She said she needed space. Not just a few days like before, but real space. She said she's been feeling suffocated in our relationship, and that the trip made her realize how much she's been neglecting herself. She said she wasn't sure if she still wanted to be married anymore. I was stunned. I had no idea things had gotten this bad for her. I knew we were going through a rough patch, but I didn't think we were anywhere close to her wanting to end things. I tried to ask her what she meant by that, but she just kept saying she needed time to figure things out. So now, here I am, completely blindsided and unsure of what to do next. She's staying with her mom again, and I'm sitting here wondering if this is it for us. I love her, but I'm not sure if love is enough to fix whatever's broken between us. I keep replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out where things went wrong and if there's anything I can do to save our marriage. Part of me feels like maybe I've been too hard on her, like maybe I haven't been as supportive as I should have been. But another part of me wonders if we've just grown too far apart, if her obsession with Instagram and this influencer lifestyle is something I can't compete with. Right now, I don't know what the future holds, and it's killing me.